Good evening. I'd like to call to order the council meeting of November 3rd, 2025. This evening, we have the pleasure of hearing O Canada perform by the Studio Forte Chamber Ensemble, an exceptional group of young musicians who can all call our community home. These talented musicians from Studio Forte have already achieved remarkable success, earning first place at the Niagara Performing Arts Festival and third at the Ontario Provincials for Young Ensembles. Many of you have also may remember their wonderful performance on the main stage at the Happening Festival right here in Grimsby, where they represented the spirit and creativity of our town with pride. Studio Forte has become a cornerstone in music education within our region. Their mission is to to enrich lives of young people through music, encouraging not only artistic excellence, but also teamwork, discipline, and a lifelong love of the arts. Through collaboration and dedication, these students continue to inspire all of us with what can be accomplished when young talent is nurtured and supported. Please join me in welcoming and congratulating the Studio Forte Chamber Ensemble. And everyone that can, please rise as they perform our national anthem, O Canada. Thank you very much for your great performance. Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship on the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none, can I have a mover and seconder Oh, sorry. Before council approves the agenda, I would like to propose lifting the Grimsby Tourism Strategy 2026 to 2031 report to be considered following the delegation. Can I move and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradsey. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that the November 3rd, 2025 council meeting agenda be approved as amended. All in favor? That's carried. Celine Fatou and Alex Mazanak, Nick from Context Research Group are here to present the tourism strategy. Please come to the podium. Yeah, from there, that's fine. Just have to put your mic on, that's all.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Okay. All right, well, thank you, everyone. I'm William Shadden from Context Research Group, or CRG. Also, I want to thank the ensemble. They were considerably better than whoever LA got to sing our national anthem down in the States. So, yeah, incredible. As mentioned, today I'm here to talk about the tourism strategy that we've been working on for several months for the town of Grimsby and share at a high level the overview of our strategic recommendations, our findings, which all kind of resulted in a pretty in-depth consultation process with the community, with residents, local business owners, BIA, community organizations, members of council yourselves. We had a pretty broad spectrum engagement to gather all the insights and perspectives, as well as conducting a pretty substantive amount of research to develop this strategy. Okay. In terms of just how we'll go through this, I'll just quickly introduce us, who we are, our background and our experience, what we bring to the table. I'll talk about some of the challenges that the community faces as it relates to tourism. I'll go over some of the key pillars of this strategy and then talk about kind of what the action plans are to implement and deliver on a strategy. And then if we have time, briefly talk about some of the economic benefits that could generate from a tourism strategy. So Context Research Group, or CRG, we are a research firm based out of, headquartered here in Ontario, have offices across Canada. We work specifically in tourism and research-related services. We have partnered with municipalities, destinations, resorts, Destination Ontario, TIO, the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario. Even down in the U.S., we have U.S. partners, the state of Vermont. So we've done a lot of research from all different kind of perspectives and initiatives, all focused on kind of tourism, visitor experience, tourism marketing, destination development, and tourism strategy. I also want to mention that this project wouldn't have taken place if it wasn't for some incredible tourism partners on this project and project partners. So that's obviously the town of Grimsby, but also Tourism Niagara, and Niagara Economic Development. Daryl from the Tourism Partnership Niagara is here today. Great to see you. So all of that kind of just, drive and motivation to help Grimsby establish a foothold in the tourism sector kind of made this project happen. And then finally, I also want to mention that in partnership with Destination Ontario, CRG has launched a tourism insights portal that's designed to help the province. And that can be accessed at doinsights.crg.ca. It's public to anyone. You just have to create an account just by signing up. No costs, and all of our research and Destination Ontario's research is made available for free to the sector to help drive, municipal tourism strategies, destination development strategies, like what Grimsby's trying to develop. Okay, so let's dive in with what some of the key challenges are in terms of a tourism strategy for the town of Grimsby. All right, so There's a few things that kind of came out of the consultation process. So one, and I'll just mention off the bat, we know that the town's already working on some of these, and also in our strategy we provide details on some of the others that maybe aren't necessarily underway. So first is the fragmented brand identity. So we understand the town's already working on a branding initiative. That's great. We provide details on kind of why and how this relates to tourism in terms of visitors accessing information, knowing kind of where that central source of truth is for getting information about Grimsby and the experiences that Grimsby offers. And some of that kind of trickles into some of these other elements. There is a lack of packaged experiences. So this ties in, we'll get into some of the solutions to these problems in a moment. But, there's a lot of different kind of cool things that Grimsby has to offer. They're kind of maybe dispersed a little bit among the community. So looking at ways that we can kind of leverage and build cohesion and collaboration among the different offerings and attractions and assets from a tourism perspective that Grimsby has. We heard from travelers, from visitors, as well as our own research, that there was a little bit of some inconsistent operating hours, so building that kind of reliability, standardization. I know it's a bit tough. Businesses are obviously concerned about, costs, but at least in peak seasons and at key days, trying to build some cohesion and consensus around what the standardized operating hours should be for key businesses and tourism assets among the town would really help. So providing at least a framework for that. Building on your signage and wayfinding, helping people navigate once they're here and understand where to go. Obviously, accommodation is a factor. There's only 2 up and running accommodators right now as we speak. No short-term accommodation, so revisiting perhaps that. Parking constraints is a big one. There's some great assets, especially along the waterfront. Not a lot of parking right now. Obviously, then people who do visit maybe are parking in residential areas, which can perhaps cause some tension with residents. So looking at how can we optimize and provide an appropriate amount of parking for people who do want to come and visit all the great offerings that Grimsby has. Looking at maybe ways we can do some, fill some gaps around a car dependence here. And then all of this, we need to also keep in mind that we need to serve the residents of Grimsby as well, right? So making sure that we're communicating how this benefits the community, right? How the revenue and all the cool initiatives that this strategy would develop not only attracts visitors to come here, but also how it improves businesses, improves kind of just overall infrastructure and assets that the town has, right? And creating cool initiatives and packages and events is not only for visitors, but also for residents of Grimsby itself, right? So making sure that communication channel's there to kind of prevent any resistance and hesitation among local residents, to get everyone to buy in, right? This benefits the whole community, not just tourists. Okay. So our strategy is really focused around 5 key pillars. These pillars are not ranked in any specific order. They work together in tandem. You can't have one really without the other. And the pillars are kind of at a very high level. We've got recommendations around leadership and governance. So who takes ownership over this? Who's accountable for this and delivering a strategy for the community? And ultimately, who's your kind of point of contact for this, right? So next is growing and attracting visitors. Obviously, pretty crucial component of a tourism strategy, right? So how do you grow and attract visitors? What are the key pieces around that? Making sure when people get here that you have the infrastructure to support them, right? It's 1, important for the visitor experience. It's 2, also important to not kind of deter from the resident experience, right? This is things like overflowing garbage cans, for example, or lack of parking. Looking at how you can build partnerships and collaborations, right? There's a lot of opportunity and appetite within the community, as well as within the regional partners to work with Grimsby, right? There just needs to be that kind of foundational step built first. Another kind of baseball reference here, if you build it, they will come. That really is true in this. And next is kind of product development and capacity building. So again, all of this foundational piece that you need to kind of build out your assets and support your assets within the community to make sure that tourism thrives. Among these pillars, we've got an action plan of key things that you can do to support tourism in Grimsby, and we've categorized these into 3 groupings. First is kind of our short-term steps. So these are easy, low-hanging fruit, kind of low-barrier items that you can do that will be relatively quick wins to get you up and running, build some momentum. That said, these are kind of relatively low-hanging fruit, but there are still some costs associated with them. They're pretty low barrier, but still there's maybe some little pieces that you'll need to figure out from a finance perspective. I know budget's already kind of allocated, but the costs aren't huge or prohibitive, but obviously still some work needs to be done on these. So first is looking at kind of, who can collaborate on tourism, right? Who's going to kind of take some ownership of this, be a resource for tourism. And we kind of felt rather than developing a new committee that's maybe necessarily devoted to tourism, GDAC would be a great fit. It already has a pretty broad breadth of different perspectives from the community who could really kind of speak to tourism-related initiatives. So they'd be a great resource to kind of help and oversee and be a supporting asset for tourism. Next is establishing digital and social media presence. So to make those accounts free, but to actually post content, someone's got to do that, right? You got to kind of build out what does your framework look for that. There's a lot of AI tools that can help you do this for free, so it's not like you need a marketing expert really. They can help you to build out a marketing strategy, help you build out frameworks, so templates for social media posts. But then from there, what are you posting, right? So that moves into the third item, like looking at all the different assets, bringing people together, bringing the different attractions and businesses who might be interested in partnering on cool initiatives, and then advertising those initiatives on those social media channels that you've created. And part of that, again, is supporting these businesses, right? So if a business or a local BIA is just natively doing their own thing and having a cool event, being able to kind of channel that and share it on the channels you've created, looking at how you can support businesses and attracting visitors and looking at what you can do there around different kind of policies and programs to support them. And then finally, you've got a great kind of sports tourism here. I mean, the new arena is incredible. So really kind of leveraging what you offer for the sports tourism side of things and looking at kind of how you can continue to collaborate and build on Niagara Region supports tourism. So you can see on the right-hand side, all of these are connected to the different pillars, and they're all really broken out in more detail in the comprehensive strategy. Moving on to, I'll quickly touch on some of the longer terms items, but I think really initially the focus should be on that previous slide for short term. Longer term, this strategy really would benefit from a tourism coordinator, right? You need someone who is responsible for this. We're talking about a substantive amount of work. Who's responsible for this? Who's accountable for this? Right? I know a tourism coordinator hiring an FTE or a half FTE, whatever you decide to do this has a cost, but ultimately after at least year one, there should be generating some funding, some business that offsets those costs, and ultimately the goal is this has an ROI. So it's actually a positive revenue generator for the municipality rather than being a line item on a budget. All right, so a healthy tourism sector generates money, creates jobs for the town, right? Isn't a cost on the town, right? But obviously it takes time to get there. When you have that foundational piece in place, you can start building more partnerships with TIO, with TPN, Lincoln and St. Catharines have their destination marketing organization, DMO, Wander and Benchlands, Niagara. They'd be open to kind of collaborating with Grimsby, but you need that kind of foundational piece in place first. So there's lots of cool things that you can do, but you need to kind of get those foundational pieces in place first. The Niagara kind of gateway there is a really cool spot where a lot of people come through, like a high traffic spot, right? So looking at how you can leverage that, talking and maybe doing events there, having vendors, businesses kind of do sampling there, or encouraging putting your kind of marketing initiatives there and centralizing that a little bit more. So lots of kind of medium-term steps that you can do. Wayfinding and signage, parking, regional experiences. Once you've kind of developed kind of more localized town experiences, you can kind of go a little bit step further and start collaborating with other municipalities, right? And build out that kind of network. But all of this takes a centralized person, right? If other municipalities want to coordinate with Grimsby on something tourism-related, who do they contact right now? Right? Right now, no one knows, right? So you do kind of need to have that kind of tourism coordinator or someone who is that central point of contact. Longer term, obviously, it would be great if we could look at how we could attract another accommodator, right? Revisit STAs, perhaps, short-term accommodation, and also improve waterfront access. It's a great asset. It's beautiful. It has the painted ladies as well. Like, there's a lot of cool things along your waterfront, but we need parking. We need some more infrastructure there. Buses and tours want to come, but there's nowhere for buses to go there, so it causes pain points and tension. So looking at how you can optimize the infrastructure there. Really quickly, I know a lot of these items sound great, but everything has a cost. But I just want to talk about the ROI. I mentioned this very briefly. So leveraging data from Niagara, looking at how many visitors come and thinking about the visitors that come through the gateway as well as visitors from the U.S., which is one of the most high-value tourism markets for Ontario, driving up through Niagara into our GTA hubs. Everyone's kind of passing through Grimsby, one way or the other, Toronto to Niagara or U.S. to Toronto, right? So you got this big artery going right through the town. If you captured 1% of visitors to Niagara, if they just stopped for a day to visit, in 2031, if you aimed for 1%, it would generate 61.2 million in visitor spending, and overall GDP impact is 57 million. Right, and then a more ambitious target of 3%, which would mean you pretty much do everything in the strategy, and everything works really well. 183 million, 172 million in GDP, right? And then obviously there's municipal tax revenue. So this is where, these investments pay off in as soon as 5 years. In terms of job creation for the community, 1% leads to 475 jobs in Grimsby to support the growth. 3% is 1,400, just over 1,400 jobs. All right, so again, if you build it, they will come. All of these require work. All of these will require effort, and some require funding. But it will pay off in dividends from just a purely economic ROI perspective. It also will help generate a very healthy tourism sector for the town. So that's the end of the presentation. Apologize for going a couple minutes over time, but I'm happy to answer any questions or dive a little deep on anything I've shared today.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions from council? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So I've got a few questions here. So the evidence that you used, the 1% and 3% that you used to come up with the 61 million and 183 million, I think it was, in potential spending, do you have a comparator, like what we're getting right now? So, because that number is meaningless unless we compare it to, unless we show it compared to what we get now and show that there is growth. So that's my first question.
Great question. There is no data that we had that was made available to us that really kind of indicates or captures right now what tourism looks like in Grimsby, so it's a bit of an unknown. So it's hard to kind of answer that. I don't know what your kind of before state is. You kind of really need to kind of get some key pieces in place in terms of the data capture to kind of assess how many visitors are coming, and then you can kind of start benchmarking and building out those KPIs. All right, so the current state of the current economic impact of Grimsby's tourism sector is a bit of an unknown, but I don't think it's a huge number, because it's just not, you're not really on the map. There's no kind of marketing around tourism in Grimsby. I think you're seen as really kind of a pass-through point at this point in time. So these numbers are kind of really like, this is now a destination. You're attracting people to come on that major artery. So it's really an ambitious goal to strive towards.
I'm assuming you could see how I would see that number as irrelevant unless we have something to compare it to, though, right? I mean, if we're saying it's going from 60 million to 180 million, that's significant. If it's going from 40 to 60, that's significant. But just saying 183 million it's just a number pulled out of, it has really no meaning without context, from my perspective. So along the same line of questioning, and I don't mean to put you on the spot because, but you're making a presentation here with some suggestions in it. Has a cost-benefit analysis been done on potential staff increases? Because staff increases have a significant cost to them. We would need to see a significant increase in the value of Grimsby land, because that's how we as a town pay for things is through taxation, or a benefit to the town as a whole before recommending a new staff member. Has a cost-benefit analysis been done on that? You sort of mentioned it, but there's not a lot of detail in there.
Yeah, so I mean, I had 10 minutes tonight, so I can't dive into everything, but in the full analysis, we provided you with an ROI, and every item in the action list is budgeted, and also we provided you with Again, kind of more details on the economic benefit as well as the job growth benefit. It's tough for us to predict exactly how much revenue or, land tax revenue would generate from increased property values. We provided some comparator communities in there. It's a bit muddied though because COVID is a bit of a wrinkle on that. So for example, towns like Prince Edward County saw huge growth in property values. But COVID, I think, is hard to kind of take out of that and say, what has tourism been the impact on that? So there are comparators in there, but it's a bit tough, a bit muddy on this. Just going back on the revenue numbers. So those numbers are based on the Ontario Ministries of Culture and Tourism's data model on average spend per day trip, right? So if we all those numbers are saying is if you attract this X amount of visitors to tourism for Grimsby for a tourism-related day trip, that's how much, based on the provincial data, you would generate in revenue for the town, right? So those numbers are what the province uses to calculate its GDP for tourism and what the minister uses for tourism. So they're not pulled out of thin air, it's a provincial model.
Thanks. I understand that. I think my point back to that was, unless we have something to compare it to, then it's very difficult to know if there's a value in that. My next question is regarding the Niagara tourism initiatives. Like Niagara as a whole obviously has a very detailed tourism initiative, lots of staff associated with tourism. Have you looked at tapping into that and working in conjunction with Niagara Tourism to get a Grimsby-specific strategy rather than hiring somebody within the town of Grimsby?
So, no. So there, probably where we think you might be best aligned is partnering with Lincoln and St. Catharines, who just established what's called a DMO, Destination Marketing Organization. They have a dedicated tourism coordinator, and she's excellent, very smart. She's really great, but there'd be still some cost for you to buy in, right? They initially wanted Grimsby to sign up, but just felt that you were a bit low capacity and would just kind of ride in their coattails. So you either need to pay to play with them on that, because they've got a pretty significant marketing platform set up, a website set up. Like, they've done a lot of groundwork and built a lot of infrastructure. So for you to kind of buy into that, you literally do need to buy in, or kind of build out your own, and then you can start collaborating on initiatives together, right? So that would I think be the best bet. They're called Wander Niagara or Niagara Benchlands. They have two different initiatives there. You can take a look at their websites, but basically they have a bunch of cool maps, and it's just right on that border of Grimsby on everything that they market and show to potential travelers. That would probably be our recommendation for a partnership.
Through you, Mayor. Sorry, I should have said it through you the previous times. I apologize for not going through you previously. So many of the concerns you brought up were specific to the downtown. You talked about things like parking, downtown and areas like that. So, which makes sense. But the downtown has its own management group in the BIA. So how do you distinguish the downtown BIA and Grimsby as a whole in your strategy? And when you talked about some of the places that we want to promote, Grimsby Beach, I think of Beamer Conservation Area and things like that, but very few of those have a financial benefit. So it's getting people to go to those things and obviously stopping at other places. So does your strategy, and if I missed it in your presentation, I apologize, but does your strategy address how you get one to result in the other? And because I think that's kind of what we wanted to get out of this, right? We've got people coming for this. How do we get them to shop at our restaurants and our retail locations and things like that?
Yeah, so exactly. So a few things on there. So one, some of the action items. So one, looking at packaged experiences, right? That's one of the short-term like low-hanging fruit things, right? So looking at different initiatives that are cross. So maybe it's, tying in a local business who can do something that's connected to the waterfront to get people to kind of explore both areas. So there's that. And then the other thing is another challenge that was identified is the fragmented identities. So we understand in our consultations with the BIA that they're working on their own branding right now, right? And meanwhile, the town's doing its own branding, right? So again, there's not this central source of truth for many of these items right now. So you've got these different players who are investing resources on competing initiatives that don't necessarily work with one another or collaborate with one another, right? So the BIA is spending all this time and effort doing branding. Meanwhile, the town's also doing branding. So they could have, invested their resources in something like different if there was that kind of collaboration and communication across the board. So stop competing with one another, looking at someone to kind of bring it all together. And then also looking at kind of ways that you can allow the infrastructure. So looking at parking in these different areas, right? That to bring in, parking and other resources, other infrastructure. So there is kind of this disconnectedness of different communities within Grimsby right now. So how can we kind of look at ways that we can bring these communities together from a transportation perspective, from a collaboration perspective? There's many different aspects of the strategy that kind of touch on these themes. But I think having someone, that's where a coordinator could probably help kind of build some of these bridges, build collaboration, make sure everyone's operating from the same playbook as well. And then some of these other bigger initiatives like transportation and infrastructure could help as well.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. I have to respectfully disagree about the coordinator position. I don't see a lot of places where other municipalities would contact the town of Grimsby to say, how do we coordinate our tourism? So, but, you're the expert and I'm not. So I guess if we did go that way, what metrics would tell us if the tourism investment is paying off? I guess is my first question. And then is there a scaled down version of this strategy that doesn't require, that fits within existing budgets and staffing rather than expanding staffing?
So all the short-term recommendations are absent of a coordinator, right? So the low-hanging fruit there that's kind of, easy to initiate doesn't involve a coordinator. And then, it's up to you on whether or not you act on any of these recommendations, coordinator being one of them. I think a coordinator is pretty critical for the success of a tourism strategy. I mean, otherwise, who's accountable and who's going to do all this work, right? Either way, if it's not a coordinator, you're going to have to delegate and find, hours among all these other staff, and then it's fractional. And then if the BIA says, hey, we're doing this cool initiative, let's bring the town in. Do they know who to contact, right? Who's that central source of truth, right? So it's not just partnering with other communities, it's partnering within Grimsby and bringing these people together. It touches on your original kind of question about how do we bring these disjointed neighborhoods and pockets of Grimsby together, right? Having that central source of truth, that central point of contact, I think is a great solution to that. There's other methods for sure, right? And you can figure it out. You can have one person who's responsible for this, another person responsible for this. A fragmented approach is also feasible for sure. But no matter which actions you implement, there's work involved, right? And someone has to do that work, right? It's up to you to figure out the nuts and bolts of it and who does what and who's responsible for what and who's accountable for that. But it's just, I think a lot of other municipalities, you're talking about comparators, a lot of other municipalities who have successful tourism strategies have a tourism coordinator. In terms of how you measure the effectiveness, so just talking about one of the short-term action items is developing your social media channels, developing some sort of marketing strategy around tourism in Grimsby that BIA can leverage and other events can leverage. And social media metrics are a great comparator there. And on top of that, what other DMOs, destination marketing organizations, do, as well as Destination Ontario, their social media links connect them to partners. So you can track conversion and revenue through that, right? So other marketing initiatives, you can say, okay, we ran this campaign where we marketed this cool BIA initiative, and we sent, 3,000 referrals to this BIA, and the BIA can then say, oh, of these, they can track these links. This led to 100 tickets purchased, right, of those 3,000, right? So then you can start equating revenue and dollars to your efforts kind of more directly. So That's why I said there's no data right now, because you just don't have that kind of infrastructure set up. Once these kind of low-hanging fruit initiatives are done, you're going to be able to start tracking data and kind of measuring performance and evaluating performance.
Councillor Davoli.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Some of my points have been covered, but I'll start back at the beginning of my list. At the beginning of the presentation, you talked about developing short-term accommodation, and it definitely exists within the town. We currently don't monitor and tax it, let's say, but it does exist. So did you accumulate data on how much short-term accommodation there currently is?
So we looked, and yeah, we are aware that there are some STA, short-term accommodations, operating in the town of Grimsby, but we're aware that they're maybe not necessarily supposed to be. Yeah, we couldn't really speak. There's not that many. There was like a handful, and it depends kind of when you set the window for booking. So there was a handful, and we couldn't really speak to, no one would kind of speak to us on the record from the STAs, but yeah, there are a couple operating. So one of the key, another driver of revenue is called municipal accommodation tax, MAT, right? Hotels were initially hesitant about MAT, but they became on board once they saw that MAT funding started generating tourism in their communities. Therefore, their bookings actually went up. They were initially saying, okay, this extra $2 or $3 is going to cause people to kind of not book with us or look for alternatives that aren't MAT, taxed. But at the end of the day, they saw that, oh, these funds are actually led to increased bookings. So the Ontario accommodation sector is now very supportive of MAT. But one of the things that they want for MAT is that you also kind of license and control your STAs, because they want a fair kind of playing field, right? If they're paying for the MAT tax on their guests, they want STAs to play. So typically, if you want to implement a MAT, you kind of also have to implement an STA program, right? They kind of do go hand in hand. We ran a MAT calculation on your town with your current two accommodators. At 60% accommodation, it generates $80,000 in revenue per year for the town in MAT funding, right? So again, that essentially offsets the cost. And like I said, once you start developing and running these things, this becomes a cost-neutral program and ultimately a revenue generator for the town. So just by implementing a MAT, once you get there, pays for a full-time tourism coordinator. It offsets that complete cost on your books, right? So yeah, MAT, STA, it's kind of would help you, I think, start funding some of these initiatives and building out that accommodation profile for the community.
If I could just continue on about the short-term accommodation. I think what we have been learning about in the last couple of years is that in order to license short-term accommodation, it comes with a tremendous cost. And municipalities like the City of Toronto and others who have implemented it have certainly struggled with that. And so, this council, I'm going to say in the last year or two, basically said we weren't going to get into licensing it, but that's a discussion for another day, always open. You made reference to the two, I'll call them hotels/motels that are in town. Did you speak to them and get any data on their current occupancy rates?
Yeah, they provided us with a bunch of data and information and insights. We spoke with both Casablanca and Quality, and so yeah, we have a lot of information from them, and that's how we were able to calculate that MAT kind of revenue generator. Now, because it's a conversation, you don't necessarily have to have an STA licensing program to implement MAT. There are municipalities, there's I think 82 municipalities in Ontario that have MAT implemented right now, and another 18 that are in the process of implementing MAT across the province. Not all of them have an STA licensing program. So if STA isn't huge, and you're going to have to, in consultation, talk with those accommodators and just feel them out if they are open to implementing a MAT without having STA licensing, right? It's just, and it depends on the municipality, it depends on the accommodators, but that's typically where pushback could come from them. But if it's not huge, then it might not necessarily be a concern, and you can implement MAT without STA. And they're not necessarily, I think, contingent on one another. You'd have to, but that's not my area of expertise. I'm just aware of the data. However, TIO are open to consulting with any municipality about how to implement MAT. They really specialize on that. So I'm happy to put the town in touch with them, or you can reach out yourself and just talk to them. They've helped quite a few municipalities across the province implement a MAT framework.
Thank you. If I could just a few more thoughts. I do agree with your comment that there are a number of organizations in our town, everything from our Chamber of Commerce, our Downtown Business Improvement Association, the town itself, where they all have digital and social media and are using it. And so we do have multiple organizations using multiple types of social media, and probably are tripping over each other to a certain extent and not really coordinating it very well. Just two last thoughts, and to a certain extent, I'm going to echo the comments by my co-councillor here that, one, whatever we do, if you're going to start the race, you need to know where you're at in the race, because when you pick up data like, 1%, the effect on GDP and so on, he's quite right. Like, we don't know where we're starting. And so it is important that if we're going to have key performance indicators to monitor how we're doing, that we know where we are at the beginning of the race. So we know, how we did in this 100-meter dash or whatever, right? And so I guess my question to you is, how do we gather up that data or those key performance indicators so we know where the starting blocks are?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's a few ways of doing it. So one, you could try and, again, partner with the hotels, but basically you kind of need to gather some survey data of visitors, right? So one would be overnight accommodation, which has a higher impact on GDP than day trips, right? So you could collaborate with the hotels, and it doesn't have to be like an ongoing year-round thing. You can kind of just like sprinkle in, just try and assess why are people staying at the hotels, because there's obviously some business hotel or just traveling through, but of their hotel visitors, how many are actually tourists, right? And if they are, the key questions you want to know is how long is their stay, and right then you can use that again with the province's model, which is called TREM. You can input the number of overnight guests you've got and the number of day guests you have, and it'll give you GDP impact, and it'll also give you the municipal tax revenue generated from that GDP impact. So you'll be able to directly calculate, or estimate, I should say, the revenue that it generated. But you need to get those number of visitors first. So overnight visitors, collaboration with the hotels to just get a sampling to try and assess how many people are coming, how many nights they're staying, and then maybe just some intercept interviewing for day visitors. So in key attractions and key events, maybe in the downtown, maybe in the waterfront, just try and assess, who's coming. So again, there's a methodology you can employ, just doing what's called an intercept interview. You can also try and estimate it by coordinating with some of these accommodations to just see. Now, there's obviously going to be outliers, like the plowing match probably had a pretty significant impact, right? But that's a bit of a one-off event, so that's a little bit tough. That's going to muddy the waters, but I suspect you would see a bump for sure, in this fiscal quarter, for the local businesses, for the whole community, on just the number of people that brought in. So it's you have to kind of take in some key considerations there. It's a bit of a challenge, but at this stage of the game, you're only going to be able to produce a rough estimate, and it depends kind of what your sources are. You're going to need to account for different things like one-offs and outliers like the plowing match. So that right now is how you could come up with an estimation on that.
Councillor Vardy. All right, we'll move to Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. There she is.
All right, go ahead, Councillor Vardy.
Sorry. I thank you for your presentation, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I found the presentation very high level, and what I was hoping to see more of was how do we exploit some of or identify and exploit some of our assets, such as, what are we doing at the Gateway, for instance, that we're not doing now that will attract more people to come in? How are we attracting people more to Beamer? What more can we do with Southward Park? What more could we do with our arena? Like I get the structural part, but I didn't, other than the waterfront trail and the Painted Ladies, I didn't see how we addressed exploiting, because we have a lot of assets. I didn't see them detailed in terms of how we can make better use of them. Did you look into that at all?
Yeah, thanks for your question. So, I was told I had 10 minutes for my presentation today, so I condensed an 80-page tourism strategy into 14 slides. So I apologize, but I was quite limited in kind of what I wanted to convey tonight. For sure, in our full strategy, we've identified and kind of quantified all the assets, the key assets. We've kind of described them. There's an asset mapping exercise we undertook to kind of categorize and identify all the assets at Grimsby, look at kind of where your strengths are, where there's some opportunities and some gaps. So that's in there, a kind of framework for you to kind of work off of. We also have a whole section in there dedicated to the Gateway and how you can really leverage that. We talk about kind of what the Gateway is doing well, and where there's certainly some opportunities for growth and optimization. We provide you with a case study for what is probably the best version of what the Gateway is, which is operating out of the UK. Right now, there's been documentaries on it and all sorts of economic modeling and lots of international press on that version. It's obviously, setting the bar high, but, we're not saying you kind of need to go to that level. And I forget the name escapes me right now, but there's a whole case study dedicated in the report to that that highway stop in the UK. So, but basically, the Coles notes on it in terms of the Gateway is bringing in key attractions like Camisa Wines or Forty Creek to the Gateway, maybe having like a sampling day there on key weekends. There are a bunch of kind of brochures and TVs in the Gateway, but I mean, I stopped there on my way through today. And it's operating. I've never seen anyone there, but I mean, on a Monday night right now, it's probably wouldn't make sense to have someone there. But I mean, it's dark, like the tourism information booth right as you walk in. The lights aren't on, the TVs are going. It doesn't necessarily feel the most welcoming. There's some things you can do. There's pretty easy kind of changes that you can do there. We talked about one of the key action items is looking at packaged experiences, right? So bringing together key things. So, maybe printing out some brochures for different kind of initiatives and package experiences and key events. I mean, I know there is the Grimsby map in the Gateway right now, so that's great, but there's got to be more, I think more of that. Maybe a dedicated screen in the Gateway that's Grimsby focused, perhaps. So there's a substantive kind of content in the full strategy that I didn't necessarily have time to dive into in the presentation today.
And if I may, does that include what more we could do with Southward Park? Because I think we've seen with the plowing match, we have a lot of space up there and we can draw people up the mountain. Did you look at, some of what we could do there? And I'm wondering, just as an aside for consideration, maybe our events coordinator could also play a key role in the marketing of the events that we have.
Yeah, I think you're correct, and I think we're aligned on that. Is that attracting more events like the plowing match doesn't have to be the plowing match year over year, but like different initiatives like that. I think you've got a lot of great assets, right? Southward Park. I think there's other cool areas and opportunities for different types of events, different types of initiatives, different types of experiences that you could attract, and for sure the sporting events, right, with the new Peach King Arena. There's a lot that Grimsby has to offer. Next step is kind of attracting those kind of key tournaments or events or big initiatives, or building them just natively with the cool assets and resources and businesses that you have here within the community, and coming up with your own versions of things or your own cool and new initiatives. And then, like you said, exactly, having that framework in place so that you can market and communicate that out through like centralized channels that has, these referral links and clickbacks so that you can then track performance. Like, these things all kind of dovetail into one another and complement one another. That's why I said these pillars really talk to one another. There's no individual pillar that you necessarily need to focus on. Everything's kind of tied in together in the strategy, and it kind of needs to be a holistic implementation to get the most successful kind of results from this.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just to expand a little bit more on the Gateway, in your report, you dedicated probably about 20% of the space to the Gateway. Yet, it's been out there for quite a while. We have not done a good job of utilizing it or taking advantage of it. In the past, we have, let me see, the chamber was out there, but we pulled it because of costs. Tourism, Niagara, I believe, was out there, pulled it because of cost. It's going to take, but you don't give us an idea of what you think it really needs to have, knowing and bearing in mind that, yeah, we don't own the place. We don't manage the place. But, it's a big chunk of it. We have missed the boat in a number of cases. I'll be the first one to admit that. Is it that big a part of how we're going to make a project viable, profitable, manageable?
So it's a huge opportunity for Grimsby and also for the rest of Niagara, right? I talked about, what Lincoln and St. Catharines are doing with their DMO, right? And how they've put up a lot of resources, invested a lot of time and effort into kind of building out a framework, marketing tools, websites. They see a lot of value in the Gateway. So I talked about how you need to kind of buy in. The Gateway could potentially be, if you figure out kind of what that looks like, and I know the kind of complications with it in terms of ownership and management, so there's some things you're going to have to figure out on making some of these things happen and what that looks like. But that is a big piece of leverage you could utilize to start building some traction with, buying into the DMO, is that they get to also market some of their events at the Gateway as well. In terms of like the Gateway right now is really it's a drive-through stop, right? So the key question we have is, how do we convert all those people that are stopping there into actually spending time in Grimsby, right? And that's the big challenge. And I like how front and center when you walk into the Gateway, there's that information booth. But like I said, the Gateway looks like when and again, I'm trying not to be too critical, but when I walk in there, it feels like I'm in a time warp to maybe late 80s, early 90s. It's pretty dated. And that, the information center, every time I've been, is dark. No one's there. There's nothing going on. I almost feel like, am I allowed to walk in here and maybe grab a brochure that's at the back, very back wall, and in this very back of this dark room that doesn't necessarily feel super inviting? So you need to kind of bring some life to that, make it feel open and warm and welcoming, so that people, when they're there or they're wandering around, they're stretching their legs, they feel like they can go into that space that's in the center of that building, right, and navigate it and explore it. I think really what I'd recommend for low-hanging fruit is figuring out how to do it, but having little kind of cool events taking place at the Gateway, so it's not just a service stop and they need to kind of figure out themselves, but there's you bring in local vendors, right? There's like I said, maybe some tastings that are going on there from Camiso or 40 Creek, and or local restaurants are set up there, right? You're gonna have to figure out the nuances of that, like tastings. The one in England that I referenced, what they do really well is that the Gateway is fully sourced, and again, this may be a little bit of a controversial thing, but there's no chains in their Gateway, right? It's all local restaurants, local vendors, right? There's a little food market that's supplied. They bring in local cheeses, local cheeses. There's the local butcher has different meats, a local bakery. So everything at their market, and again, this is very high level and maybe not necessarily what you could do, but everything at their market is local, right? There's no chain there at all. It's purely locally driven. It's green certified, right? So it's giving back to the environment as well. So there's all these really cool initiatives that they're doing, but the whole thing is focused on kind of driving people into the local markets, local economy. They're exploring local shops, local restaurants, and it's just like the gold tier for what one of these could look like. And even if you get halfway there, it's going to be such a dramatic improvement for what you have right now, right? So just bringing in some local events, keeping all the chains that are in there, making it easier for people to navigate that kind of information booth that's in the middle. That's probably the low-hanging fruit for the Gateway. You're exactly right. And that's why it takes up such a big portion of our overall strategy, the long document that I've referenced. It attracts so many people. You get so much foot traffic there. If you could, like I said, if you could just convert 1% of the people going through there to come and spend the day in Grimsby, stop in Grimsby, explore some of your restaurants, explore some of your attractions, it's going to just help the community and help your local businesses and drive up your economic benefit.
Thank you. Just one more. A couple of places in the report, you refer to tourists and then visitors. I think that there's a powerful difference between the tourist and the visitor. The tourist, they're going to go to the boat going up the 40-mile creek or something. But the visitor is more soft-spoken, is a spender, but a very quiet type of a person. But is there one over the other that you really want to target? I mean, with the tourists, you're going to have to give them the venues. With the visitor, then we can possibly do it with what we've got, which is, within ourselves.
Yeah, good question. I mean, visitor, I think, is a little bit more of a broader term. It captures more individuals than tourists. Visitors can be driven from visiting friends and relatives, family and relatives as well. They're often, as well, could be more likely to transition to residents as well. I know we spoke to a lot of people just locally here who have just moved to Grimsby after kind of visiting and exploring and seeing what Grimsby has to offer. So again, it's different. I think, tourists, like, they're the people that would come on the coach buses that, would want to maybe go and visit the waterfront that can't find parking right now. Attracted to maybe some of the more staple attractions. Visitors perhaps looking for more of the authentic experiences off the beaten path. So, it really depends. There's different segments and different ways of looking at it, Councillor. But at the end of the day, both of them, would contribute to a healthy, thriving tourism sector. I don't think there's, when you've developed a little bit more data infrastructure, you can kind of see who's coming here. You'll be able to start profiling them. Like if you start doing any social media campaigns, like Facebook ad targeting, to some of your events, once you've got that capacity up and running, you'll be able to see metrics from them on who your demographics are. You'll know who's coming, who's resonating with the key activities, and you'll be able to start building out what's called segments, right? Like visitor segments, traveler segments, and see, who's really interested in visiting Grimsby and what types of events draw those people in. And then from there, you'll be able to kind of hone in on who should we be targeting, who's our kind of bread and butter, who do we want to target, who we want to come to these events. So really data will help kind of inform maybe some of the questions that you've got there. Probably 2 years from now, you'll be ready to start really diving into that.
Thank you.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through you, Mayor Doran, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I was here at the GDAC committee when you had presented before, so I do know some of this stuff that you were talking about, and I had requested the report so I could dive kind of into some of the stats and stuff you were saying. So just a few things that are not mentioned in your condensed version that are from the original one. A lot of money is assumed to be required for this to happen. So at one point it says that the upfront cost, or sorry, the year one costs are estimated between $155,000 and $235,000. And then it says that $155,000 would be with the assumption that you're using municipal staff already. So it's still, we're taking staff members that are already maxed in their own departments and then putting them somewhere else. It's not free labor. You're still going to need to make up for the departments that they work in. So we're looking more at $235,000 for the initial cost. And then through this discussion, we're talking about the coordinator. And again, if we're not hiring the coordinator, we're eventually going to need to hire the coordinator. But in the meantime, we're drawing on our municipal staff. So that's a concern. With that, if we're going as far as hiring the coordinator, we're kind of saying we're gonna pay to play, like you just said. So what does that mean? That means that if we're going to partner with Lincoln and St. Catharines, we're probably going to need to put up just as much money as Lincoln, comparatively, which is, I'm assuming they do a fantastic job. It's a considerable amount of money. Difference being that with St. Catharines and Lincoln, we have 90% of residential tax base. They have a lot more commercial taxes that they're drawing on. And with this report, there's an assumption that that there are new businesses coming in and setting up commercial businesses. So a lot of these statistics and the assumptions for these gains that we're going to have, it's with the implication that these commercial properties are going to become built or, and these are new properties because we do have them. But again, which is a little false because that's a pretty extreme assumption. Also with the municipal accommodation tax, that's also quite a big factor in where you're getting these numbers from. With 60 rooms in the Quality Inn and even less now in the, I'm not even sure what the numbers are, but it's declining. So that's not really a reasonable tax or source of income that we're going to get there as well. When you talk about the collection of those accommodation taxes, that's going to require a staff member to be the one collecting. So that's another thing that we're going to have to also hire. So there's a significant cost with all of this, which is concerning to me because, if we're going to do this, I want to make sure that we're making the money back. In the first report, you had referenced, gains 2026, but in the second one, you looked at 6 years out, or 5 years out, 6 years out to 2031. So I don't know if that was because we're going to be at a loss for the first little while, and then we're assuming that by 2031, we're going to be having this, more respectable output. But again, that's just a little concerning. In the first draft also, you had said, one of the guiding principles is that tourism should enhance the residents' quality of life and not compromise their daily experience. So I didn't see that in the second one, but I think that's key. And I will tell you that with our taxes right now, and it's not all town of Guernsey, regional taxes, just the economy in general, there's already, a lot of input as far as what we're doing with our money. And so I am concerned that we're now going to ask them to pay significant amount, and we maybe have not even consulted with them. I've consulted. I've asked, in prior Facebook group, I got 276 people asked whether we should invest in a tourism strategy. 80% said no, we should not. And there was no implication of what that cost was, but here we're looking at 235,000-ish. So if we're saying 235,000-ish this year, does that 80% of the 276 agree that we should do that? I don't know. Can you expand on when you had looked to get engagement from the community? I saw that there were stakeholders as far as businesses that you spoke to. There were quite a bit. You had the two tourism sessions here. I did see some people in it, but I'm not convinced that that's enough to make, assumptions in what our community would like. How many people, how many residents, Grimsby residents, have you spoken with, or have you had through Grimsby Let's Talk provide their opinions and positive feedback moving forward?
Hey, yeah, thanks. Thanks for your comments. So the budgeting amounts that you've outlined is if you do everything, right? So we've given you a menu, a selection, right? So you don't have to do everything, right? If you did absolutely everything and you went 110%, then yeah, that's a cap. And also their estimates as well. I do think that if there's economy of scale. If you went through everything, you could, dial back some of those costs. And we also were not, conservative with our pricing. We kind of went at the high end of our pricing. So those are very liberal prices, and that's if you do everything. So I don't think, I just want to make sure that we're not misrepresenting the report and saying to do this, you have to spend 235. That's not what the report is about. You can do this and spend, 10,000 in year one if you want. Right? So it's up to you how much you do and what you do. We provided you with a laundry list of things you can do, and it's a la carte. You can pick and choose from that menu on what you feel is important and should be done. My report today kind of highlighted what I think are the key kind of short-term, low-hanging fruit items, and I think realistically you could probably do those items in year one for around $20,000 to $25,000, right? So it really depends. Just to clarify that point first. And second of all, in terms of the number of people we spoke with, it was around 75 people in total. Now, that's through individual consultations. We had about 25-ish, 30 people come to each of the town halls. So, yeah, maybe about 125 in total. And these are all different stakeholders, obviously. Included residents, business owners, Chamber of Commerce, BIA, members of the council. So it was a variety of individuals. But we didn't do like telephone polling to kind of get a representative sample of Grimsby. It just wasn't within the scope of work for this. But we did just we would kind of broadly publicize these public town halls we held. That's where probably it would be easier for residents to kind of come and share their thoughts. We had local residents come. Residents who lived near or at the Painted Ladies, for example, talking about the issues they faced as being a resident of that kind of asset of Grimsby and how there was a lack of infrastructure for there, and concerns that they had around parking and lack thereof. So, yeah, we did receive some residents' perspective, but, we didn't survey, the whole community of Grimsby in this project. The other aspect is, and like you said, for any tourism strategy to be successful, you have to take into consideration your local resident sentiment. So I did cover that even in my presentation today with the slides, the condensed version that I shared. Right, the strategy needs to, in a few ways, make sure that residents are considered. Right? You need to provide infrastructure for the strategy. You need to provide infrastructure for your tourists, whether it's parking, whether it's garbage cans, things like that. These are typically the most common complained about issues, and when tourism is kind of booming. So the other big thing can be housing pricing. If you have a wild kind of STA section that kind of starts booming. Right, then house properties can kind of become very expensive because things are being converted into STAs. So there are a bunch of kind of considerations you need to keep in mind. When I talked about the communication strategy in the presentation today, you need to make sure you're clearly communicating to the residents what the benefits of this strategy is to them. Right, so building all this infrastructure, building these events, like I said earlier, it's not just for external tourists and visitors, but local residents as well can take advantage of these cool new initiatives, right, and these cool experiences, right? Also the generation of jobs that need to kind of encourage and support the tourism sector. So providing a means to kind of financial well-being for local residents as well, a means to meaningful employment is also beneficial. So making sure that you're emphasizing that communication aspect to the community is important for any tourism strategy.
Thank you.
Councillor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. I just want to start off by saying that I absolutely support going down this endeavor, and I think it's paramount that we collaborate very closely with municipalities Lincoln and St. Catharines. And as you said, we definitely need to put some skin in the game. One thing I would really like to be able to see is some economic impact data from the IPM that we just had. I imagine it would be numbers that we'd all want to continue and to bring events in the future to mimic that, but also the partnerships that West Niagara has made facilitating that event. I think it's also paramount that we don't let those just fall into being a one-off event, and that we continue to try to facilitate events of that magnitude. But then I also wanted to share a story. So years ago, actually, the city of Barrie decided to embark on a tourism master plan and hired a strategic tourism coordinator who I was pleased to meet at an economic development conference back in February. This individual who actually she created the Barrie Air Show, which results in $15 million of economic impact for the city every year, and even did $11.3 million this year in a bad weather year. So I'm not expecting you to have a Niagara or Grimsby Air Show idea ready for us tonight, but I think that this plan is essential in building the foundations that will eventually yield, and that could be a fruit that we pick from the tree. I guess my question is, how is that data kind of collected, like to use the city of Barrie's example, where they can actually measure that impact from that event, and is that kind of data we could expect to see from the IPM?
Yeah, so when you have big events like that, there's a bunch of different tools and resources that you can use to collect that, and there's companies that offer that. And what they do, they set up what's called a geofence around the event. So I don't know if the plowing match had that or not. It depends on if the coordinators kind of opted for that, but you can track exactly who's coming and gather all this information from them. So often the companies that offer these geofencing kind of platforms are able to kind of connect that to their social media metrics, their destination, so you can see how far they've traveled from. You can kind of see data on them, how long they stayed, and from that you can then start estimating and mapping out economic revenue. And also Barrie can leverage partnerships and collaborations. I'm not 100% sure if they have a MAT, but if they did have a MAT, one of the benefits of having a MAT is that you get accommodation data, right? Now your hotels and accommodators are sending you all of their bookings because there's a fee per booking, right? So you know exactly the level of accommodations that you have within your community. So you can see how many nights they book, what capacity they're at, and again, you can estimate from there using the provincial model, the TREM model that I mentioned earlier, the economic benefit, right? Overnight visitors provide way more value than day visitors do, right? So in combination with that, that's typically when you have a big event like that, the tools that you can leverage when you're established to kind of estimate economic benefit and kind of produce those types of reports like Barrie had. And yeah, for sure, I think kind of thinking about what Grimsby's niche could be to have a cool recurring event and carving out your space like that. I think that's a great success story you shared with Barrie and the air show. So just figuring out kind of what Grimsby has and coming up with your own kind of annual draw and putting your identity on the map for something. There's a lot of cool history in Grimsby. It could be something tied to that. You've got a great, you've got up in the escarpment, you've got beautiful assets. At the waterfront, you've got beautiful assets. So thinking about, kind of brainstorming what that is. Unfortunately, in the report, we don't have that kind of silver bullet idea of hey, this is the thing you should do that will set you apart. I think it needs to be kind of built in collaboration with the community, but for sure having a dedicated tourism coordinator to champion that and build everything that needs to be in place to get an event like that Barrie Air Show in place is going to be a key to that success. So.
I agree completely. And just to summarize, I think that the fact that we don't have that, I'll say, token yearly event, I think that it's all the more grounds for strengthening deeper ties and deeper collaborations with, say, the Lincoln, who may have more like the Grace of the Bench winery events already. But I think we are better together, and it might be also wise to carve out an identity together.
Councillor Frick.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Before I say anything, I just want to acknowledge and thank the 5 business ambassadors that have come out tonight, and the folks from Lincoln, and from our GDAC membership and all the others from the business community, I'd like to thank you all for coming out in support of this particular document and this particular presentation. Well, I've heard all the kind of downside or concerns or the negatives about all this. It's a pity that we didn't pick up a lot of positives. I think this report is very, very important, and it's the first time we've ever done this. Grimsby has never embarked on some type of a formal strategy for the town. When you consider the number of assets we have, the tourism assets we have in this town, they're numerous. There's so many, I don't even want to start mentioning. And, you know, and they cost us money. Like the Beamers cost us money. Southwood Park cost us money. Peach King Center cost us money. If we don't get tourists and visitors to come into those places, they don't get revenue. I mean, you've got to look at it from that point of view, too. So let's look at the positive side of this. We now have an opportunity to crawl, which is what we're going to do first, before we walk, and then walk before we run. And like any journey, it starts with the first step. So every single municipality that started a tourism program started where we're starting now. So now that we have a framework, a potential strategy, and the first year is going to cost us minimal. I mean, your presentation showed how we could kick this thing off next year with a minimal amount of finance and a minimal amount of resources within the town hall. We can draw on the resources in the town. We have a number of advisory committees that could actually help kick this thing off, like GDAC, for example. I mean, let's face it, GDAC does a lot of work. We've put on a lot of events, and it costs us nothing because we do it from volunteers. So this could start out that way. So let's please look at the positive side of this. Look at the positive side of Grimsby, which we have lots to offer to the community at large, and start to look at how we can piggyback off those things, structure them, and then the following year after that, maybe we can start to put together packages, structured packages, maybe get certain types of annual events here, like the plowing match, like the International Kite Show, or the International Dog Show, or whatever the case might be. There are things to be done. There are things we can do. We have the space, and we have the assets in which to do it. So this report tonight is really the crawling stages of a tourism strategy, and it's well done. And I attended all of the public events. Like all public events we have, it's about the same type of turnout we get from any of them. They're all about the same. I don't think they're any different. I've been to a lot of them. We get 25 or 30 people that come out. And the folks that did come out, and I think there was only 2 councillors I saw at the 3 events we had that came out to this event, they were all passionate. They were all very involved. They all had great ideas. They offered their concerns, and they're all included in your report. I give you credit for that. So let's please look at Grimsby from a positive point of view in terms of what we have and assets from a tourism perspective, and get this show on the road finally in a formal way, because we've been just kind of picking things all over the place for the last number of years. Let's move this forward, because we have the opportunity now to do this, and we have a framework to do it within. So I don't have a question, because I've been very close to this all along, as you know, and hopefully we will get this going, and I thank you for your attention and for your comments around the table. Thank you very much.
Councillor Korstanji? No? We're good? Okay. All right. Seeing no further, Councillor Davoli.
Thank you. And I may be leaping to the next part of the staff report too, but I'll just ask our guest while he's here. We talked to, and you had mentioned sort of that you don't need to do it all at once. You can start with baby steps. But what we really need is to see it costed out in terms of the baby steps, right? Or each of the, I'll call it each of the components of your recommendations. I've scanned through the more fulsome report. Am I just missing a page that it's on, or did you actually take that step and sort of work out what those costs would be by recommendation?
So we pulled together on the presentation today kind of what we think are, like, we provided quite a few different action items in the full report. And in the presentation today, my low-hanging fruit, kind of short term, I think there are about 6 on the slide. That's drawn from the full report. So I don't know which page on, I'd have to check, but everything in there is kind of costed. There's a table in there in the report, about 3/4 of the way through, I believe, that has all the action items and the individual costs associated with those. So again, I think, I can double check, and if it's not there, what I can do is the action items that I presented today, I can provide the cost for those and resubmit to council with just those specific items kind of costed. But like I said, the costs we provided are estimations, and there are, like, especially the short-term stuff, there's just so many cool AI tools now that you could leverage that you maybe don't necessarily need to spend as much as if we had this conversation a year ago, and definitely not as much as if we had it 3 years ago. There's a lot of cool optimizations and things you can do, especially around the stuff we're talking about, where it's like social media, marketing campaigns, right? You can have ChatGPT outline a whole comprehensive kind of marketing campaign on how you do things start to finish. You can have other AI tools design the visualizations and the actual content that you can then publish on those initiatives once you kind of get the content from your local businesses and different events, and reaching out to the assets like Nels Manor and see what's going on, and then kind of just amplify their content through your channels that you've set up. So there's all sorts of different really kind of cool tools that you can do that are free, easy to use, and kind of will get you to that kind of crawling state. Happy to kind of resubmit with some specific kind of costing elements there.
Councillor Sharwood.
Through Mayor Jordan, I just wanted to, I have the information here, so I'm happy to read it. So in the action plan, the short term for appointing a tourism coordinator, estimated cost 60 to 80K annually. And these are all short terms, I'm going to say. Establishing digital and social media presence, 15 to 30K upfront. Introduce package experiences to be determined. Regional marketing campaigns, 50 to 75K annually. Strategic partnerships with TIAO and TPN to be determined. Extend business operations in peak season, 15 to 20K total. Academic and skills partnerships to be determined. Short-term, these are all short-term. Niagara West Sports Tourism Collaboration, 15 to 30K annually. And last one, establish a tourism advisory committee. There's no cost yet.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, that's the full list. What I presented today was a selection of that, and we also readjusted in consultation with council, with kind of administrative staff. We readjusted the timelines, and like, for example, the hiring of a coordinator is no longer short-term, it's midterm, because we realized that by the time we're submitting this, budgets had already been set, so that was definitely not a feasible kind of action within the first year. So from that report, the shifting of priorities has been made, and what I presented today is more accurate, but I recognize that the costs weren't attached with each of those action items. And if that's it, I will just say in closing, maybe one short-term thing that's not on there is that you need to take Grimsby Rib Fest back. I realized in our consultation that Grimsby Rib Fest is actually not held in Grimsby. So that could be a short-term action that you could do that should be relatively easy to implement.
All right, thank you for your presentation, and seeing no further questions, can we have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradsey. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolve the presentation on the tourism strategy be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder to get report PA 25-38 on the floor for discussion? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Bradsey. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Bradsey. Are we going to present it or not? No? Okay. I think we've gone over a lot of questions. Are there any more questions from council? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Bradsey, resolve that report PA 25-38, Grimsby Tourism Strategy 2026-2031, dated November 3rd, be received, and that the tourism strategy be endorsed in principle, and that staff proceed with the implementation of the short-term quick wins that are identified in this report using existing operational resources. All in favor? I'll ask questions or comments. Councillor DeVoli.
I'm sorry, Mayor Jordan. So when we vote to approve this, just because we don't have a clear chart in front of us that says the steps and the cost, so are we really referring to the, I'll call it, Section 10 of the major report, the action plan with each of the estimated costs in there? Can we just get a handle on what those costs are that this report is recommending?
All right, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, we're endorsing this report in principle. The short-term quick wins is listed in the staff report, and there's 6 bullet points there. That's what we're endorsing today, or approving today. Which is, do you want me to list it out? It's
The
to,
dollars with it? That's my concern, is there's no dollars.
right, so that would be, I mean, those are very quick wins, such as establishing a digital and social media presence and whatnot that can be handled internally as we speak. There's some stuff that's introducing package experience and whatnot that would come back to council, right? And which will give you those dollar numbers. Again, encouraging extended hours with the BIA, those are conversations. So it is very minimal in terms of dollars at this time.
Yeah, I think it says it right in the resolution that we're using existing operational resources. Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm just concerned that, like, if we're, again, it's not free labor, so we're drawing from one department. So I'm hoping that the implications here, if we do approve it, that this is a very part-time takeaway. It's not a redirection of community services from their departments to tourism.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we did have an internal conversation, and these are points that we could support with our current existing staff complements, so there is no financial impact at this time.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you. Clarification, if I can. I don't recall any resolution that we've had before where we've said endorsed. We've approved, we've received, but why the term endorse? We maybe have, but I don't recall seeing that word used on a resolution. Is there a particular reason?
I think that it's not that we're receiving it, but that the tourism strategy be endorsed in principle. So that's not, it's in the body of that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have endorsed in principle. I can't find the exact example, but we definitely have.
Councillor Corstein.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, through your chair. So just to clarify, endorsing this in principle has zero financial impact right now and won't in the future unless we approve it.
Exactly, yeah. All right, Councillor Howe's asked for a recorded vote. Go ahead.
I just want to get this, because if we're, putting our name to this, I want to make sure that there's something here that says that there's no financial implication. So can we put that in the recommendation somehow, that there's no financial implication, and that that's the most... Can we put in that any expenses that are required will come back to council, like in the recommendation?
That's just procedure. So like,
Okay.
by approving this, it says using existing operational resources. If there's any budget implications, then it becomes a whole new ballgame. So
Okay.
it's quite explanatory. Councillor Vardy.
Sorry, I thought we were voting, so I was putting my hand up. I don't have any questions.
All right, thank you. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Bradzi. Resolved that report PA 25-38, Grimsby Tourism Strategy 2026 to 2031, dated November 3rd, 2025, be received, and that the tourism strategy be endorsed in principle, and that 2, staff proceed with the implementation of the short-term quick wins that are identified in the report using existing operational resources. Recorded vote, please.
I'm not sure this is going to work in a hybrid, but I vote in favor.
That's noted, Councillor Vardy. All right, and that's carried. Up next, Councillor Sharwa, can you please provide your chair's report for community services?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. The Community Services Committee met on October 28th, and I'll provide a brief update on the key items discussed. First, we received the minutes from the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee. At the request of Councillor Vardy, who chairs the committee, she's asked that I include some of the updates from that committee. So as part of my chair's reports moving forward, I will. So in this, I'll just talk about the recommendations today in the endorsement package. So the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee adopted 2 resolutions and recommendations for Council's consideration, which are included in tonight's agenda under 9.1, the committee endorsement package. The first recommendation requests that staff report back on the feasibility of creating a dedicated page on the Town of Grimsby's website highlighting our green initiatives. And the second recommendation asks that staff identify a list of priority locations for new bike rack installations, and that funds be included in the 2026 budget to support these installations. So back to the Community Services Committee. The committee also heard an update from the Grimsby Museum. Attendance at events continues to be strong, though registration for the upcoming Glam Gala has been slower than hoped, with only 33 tickets sold at the time of our meeting. Hopefully those have increased since then. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank our local businesses who've supported this event through the sponsorships and donations to the silent auction. These include Lux Nail Bar, Goman's Appliances, In Power Yoga, Bounce Blowouts, Kevin Whitaker, Psychic Medium, Harmony Jewelers, Spaceless Media, Station One, and the Dutch Shop. They've all provided donations. And a special thanks to Spaceless Marketing and 40 Creek for stepping up to become the event's primary sponsors. Staff also noted that since the start and end dates for the museum and foundation repairs remain uncertain, they are holding off on booking new events in the new year until that schedule is confirmed. Next, we received a summer aquatics and camps report. In aquatics, we saw steady growth in swimming lesson enrollment and continued interest in the Marlin swim team program. Public swims remain extremely popular, particularly on the 16 heat warning days we had this summer, and overall participant feedback was very positive. And the report for summer camps showed a similar trend, strong, steady growth, and excellent feedback from participants and families. Finally, the committee received a report on the Peach King Center refrigeration plant replacement. Community services staff engaged an engineering consultant to assess the existing systems and recommend viable replacement options. The consultant evaluated both traditional ammonia-based and modern synthetic refrigeration-based systems and presented several design options for consideration. After reviewing all options, staff and the consultant identified the complete removal of the existing ammonia systems and installation of a factory-engineered RF13A based packaged chiller using ethylene glycol as the working fluid, and the new chillers and associated components would be installed in the larger existing mechanical rooms, reusing existing buried piping where feasible. The committee supported their request. And that concludes my update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Howe.
Just a clarification for me, is that printed going to be like in our minutes when we get it? Because didn't we pass a resolution that everything had to be in print and couldn't be verbal?
Sorry, so that was for reports, presentations. It had nothing to do with chairs reports. And it was, I'm happy to include this, but that wasn't discussed. We just, yeah.
Put out there, and
We,
didn't understand at the
yeah,
time.
yeah, no, it wasn't for chairs, but I am happy, I always type these up, so I'm happy to include it if you'd like.
Good.
And I always, often I put these on social media as well.
I think that if you read the minutes of the meeting, it's pretty much, yeah, a rehash of what happened at the meeting. All right, Councillor DeFlavio?
Is this your choose? Am I doing
All right,
choose?
you have a question, Councillor DeVoli, all right?
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I know you were looking right at me. I thought you realized. Just a question on the, I'm going to get the name wrong, the chiller replacement or whatever in the arenas. Is that actually in this year's budget? Is it proposed for next year's budget? Could you just give us some background on that, or perhaps one of our staff could?
I believe Sarah Sweeney's online and she's got all the details, but it's for the 2026 budget. Sarah, can you answer that?
Sure, through the chair. So yes, it is in the 2026 budget, so you will see that as part of your budget presentation. We just wanted to give a bit of information to committee as a whole. That is a shift in direction, and just wanted to share what we're doing and the reasons why. So you will see it there.
So just to clarify, we still have to approve the 2026 budget. So by approving these reports to us and the minutes of community services, we're not actually committing to it yet until we approve the 2026 budget, correct? I see you nodding.
Yes. Yes.
And then my last question on that particular project, is there a deadline that by which we have to make this conversion over under provincial regulations or something like that?
Through the chair, no, it is not so much that. It is more the age of the system. We know we really need to replace the west side in particular due to the age of the system. So it's more to do with the asset management aspect of things. However, that trend and that change we are seeing as well, but it is really more about asset management in this case.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further questions, Councillor DeFlavio, can you provide your chair's report? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. So the meeting of October 29th, the first thing we dealt with was drinking water and wastewater QMS endorsements. The 2025 Drinking Water Quality Management System Operational Plan and the 2025 Wastewater Quality Management System Operational Plan were presented. They're part of our legislative commitment to maintaining compliance with provincial standards. I think we've discussed many times the importance of drinking water since Walkerton. This is all part of the management system that makes sure that the water that residents in Grimsby are getting through their tap is safe. Our staff explained that while much of this work formalizes existing practices, it also enhances data management and supports better decision-making. So it's not just a looking back, it's a looking forward kind of approach to doing things. Committee members raised some pretty thoughtful questions about implementation, including whether additional training or resources were required, how compliance and continuous improvement will be tracked, whether these systems could help reduce insurance costs by demonstrating risk mitigation. Staff confirmed that costs are currently captured in annual budgets and that process is helping formalize data collection for future planning. The big part of the meeting was the Public Works Department update for October 2025. Our Public Works staff has been kind enough to give us these updates at least a couple of times a year. They tell us the status of some of the major projects that are going on with the town of Grimsby. Just to remind people of what's going on, the downtown water main and complete streets project is underway. A detailed staging plan will be presented to stakeholders hopefully in December to ensure businesses are informed about construction sequencing in the downtown. It's going to have a huge impact on our downtown, this project, so we want to make sure that that everybody is communicated with effectively. It's a big priority for 2026. We did have a brief discussion about the Casablanca Boulevard reconstruction. Although that is a regional project, it is of a concern to many of the members of the committee and members of this council and residents within the town of Grimsby around especially stormwater and CN crossing timelines. We still don't have a fixed date, but we're hoping for early 2026 now. Traffic safety programs. Staff presented speed data from Roberts Road showing that lowering the speed limit alone did not change driver behavior, which I think most of the data around the province and around the world shows. It sparked a bit of a discussion about the need for a three-pronged approach, that is the 3 E's, engineering, education, and enforcement, to achieve meaningful safety outcomes. We talked about the pavement condition index, which is keeps track of what our roads and pavement looks like throughout the town of Grimsby. The next full assessment is scheduled for spring of 2026 and is part of our asset management program. The transportation master plan is also coming. It's nearing completion with opportunities for one-on-one meetings with council. So stay tuned for a meeting with our consultants about the transportation master plan so they can get your feedback. For deeper engagement, we talked about shoreline protection. Public Works is applying an asset management lens to prioritizing shoreline protection. That asset management approach, although it's an arduous process up front, it does give us a really good idea of what we have as a town and what we need to do in the short term and especially in the long term from a financial perspective, how much money we should be putting aside, where our costs lie in the future. So staff is going to take that same approach to shoreline protection, which I think is a wise approach. There was other business. Councillor DeVoley talked about the odor issue that has been going on Park Road for decades now because of the sewage from West Lincoln coming down the mountain. Staff will follow up with the region regarding odor control measures related to the force main. There's a borehole investigations underway on Main Street to locate historic train tracks. For those of us who've been in Grimsby for a long time, nobody's been in Grimsby that long because the tracks were stopped being used in the 1930s. But there were tracks buried under Main Street from the old Hamilton, Grimsby, and Beamsville railway line that used to go down Main Street. They're investigating because when we do our downtown water main replacement project, those tracks will have a significant impact on our ability to dig down there. Questions were raised about automated speed enforcement. Not really a town thing, it's a regional thing. Councillor Cristangeli flagged concerns about timing of regional relining work on Christie, Maple, and Ontario Street over the Thanksgiving weekend, which was a valid concern. Councillor Howe requested updates on the escarpment crossing and Casablanca timelines, which we haven't gotten yet, but staff is going to follow through on. And there was also more discussion about the downtown water main project. Staff confirmed that the future TMP policies will include a matrix to guide traffic calming measures. I'm going to wrap it up real quick, but all that means is that staff are developing a clear system for deciding when and where traffic calming measures occur so that we have something a policy to look at and say, if this, then this, as far as traffic calming is concerned. So we don't just come on a one-by-one method saying, I don't like the way that traffic looks on this road, we need to fix it. We're going to have a policy in place where it's very clear what happens when a certain threshold is achieved. And that, I have a couple other things, but I'm happy to answer other questions, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councillor DeFlavio. Any questions? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to approve the previous minutes? Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Charwa. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, second by Councillor Charwa. Resolved the following minutes be approved. Council, October 20th, 2025. Community Services Committee, October 28th, 2025. And Public Works Committee, October 29th, 2025. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the Grimsby Green and Grimsby Heritage endorsement package? Moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor Frake. Moved Moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that the council endorsement packages from Grimsby Green Advisory Committee dated October 9th, 2025, and from the Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee dated October 27th, 2025 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive the board minutes? Moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor Korsanji, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that the following board minutes be received. Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, October 9th, 2025. Grimsby Heritage Advisory Committee, October 27th, 2025. All in favor? That's carried. All right, we move to announcements. I am pleased to share that we are inviting Grimsby's young artists to take part in the Mayor's Holiday Card Art Contest. We are asking local youth to submit their original holiday-themed artwork for a chance to have their design featured on my 2025 holiday greeting cards. The winning artwork, along with a selection of runner-up pieces, will also be displayed at the Grimsby Public Art Gallery's community exhibition space. Entries are due by Friday, November 21st at 4:30 p.m. and can be submitted digitally by emailing gpag@grimsby.ca or dropped off at the Grimsby Public Art Gallery. This is a great way to showcase the creativity and talents of Grimsby's young people during the holiday season. And other announcements is the CAO and I just got back from a whirlwind tour of Grimsby, UK. Grimsby, UK and Cleethorpes are consolidated town in northwestern Lincolnshire, and we had a really good 4 days there. It was a whirlwind of meeting people, meeting community groups, actually giving presentations to the 195 Grimsby Squadron Air Cadets, touring the fishing village, touring the ports. And as people may or may not know, our Grimsby was named by John Graves Simcoe, who was the Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada from 1791 to 1796. And he saw the similarities of Grimsby as a fishing village, much like Grimsby, England. And fishing still is a big part of Grimsby, England. The company, Young's Brothers Fish Company, is actually owned by Safina Foods, a Canadian company. So it's something that we share that history. We share a number of other significant things, and it was really an interesting trip to really look at how we can use economic development, exchange programs, and how we can just use our connections and our historical connections to just make both Grimsby's a better place. So we had a really it was really insightful, and the number of similarities were really uncanny. And so it was really, really worthwhile for a starting trip. And we're looking to receive delegates from Grimsby, England, sometime early in the new year. Any other announcements? Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. Last week was Niagara Week at Queen's Park. I was fortunate enough, our CAO had a busy week last week. I was fortunate enough to attend on your behalf the evening of last Monday, where members of Parliament, regional staff, councillors from all over the region, and ministers all came together to eat food created by Niagara College, drink wine made by Niagara College. It was a great event. I got to bend a few ears, and as I'm sure our staff, Terry and Sarah, got to do the same as well. We got to harass people about the GO station in Grimsby and also thank them for the work that's gone into the West Niagara Memorial Hospital. We've seen a lot of investment in Grimsby from this government, so it's not just, we're also thanking them for what has come, but also saying it's not enough and we need more. So it was a great opportunity. Our MPP, Sam Oosterhoff, always a gracious host. And there was a moment for Jim Bradley, which I think was particularly touching for all of us that were there. Mr. Bradley, somebody who put in half of a century of work for the Niagara region, and somebody who definitely deserves to be remembered. And it was particularly heartfelt by everybody that was there. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that our Public Works staff sent out a memo this week that our sanitary lateral work is beginning. There are 46 different sites throughout town where our sanitary lateral replacement contract is happening. The scope of the work is a replacement of the lateral pipes that have been identified as requiring replacement through previous inspection. There's a town contractor on site, so they're going to be excavating, removing old laterals and replacing the new ones, backfilling the excavating. So if you see this around town, the goal is to have this done by December, the middle of December, and any and all steps are going to be taken to ensure that minimal disturbance and inconvenience occurs to the residents while this goes on. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Sharwa.
Through Mayor Jordan, thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge Grimsby Glows had happened a few days ago. Councillor Korstanji and I both attended. It was wonderful. Councillor Korstanji actually she was tasked with being one of the judges for both, was it for the dog contest as well, and the pumpkin carving contest. She was busy. I got to just hang out and watch all the kids rolling around in the leaves and the families, and it was a great turnout. It was right before the Game 7 of the Jays game. So we weren't quite sure what the turnout was going to be like, but it was excellent. So again, thank you. That was the Rotary Club that put that on, help with the town of Grimsby, lots of sponsors and volunteers, and the community loved it. It was absolutely wonderful. So thank you.
Great. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the consent report? Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that Council hereby approves the following item, that the consent item be approved on the recommendations as contained therein. Report PA 25-37, the report PA 25-37 Heritage Designation, 88 Main Street East and 24 Auditorium Circle, dated November 3rd, 2025, be received, and that Council proceed with the passing of the designation bylaws for the properties at 88 Main Street East and 24 Auditorium Circle. All in favor? And that's carried. All right. Councillor Vardy has moved and Councillor Bradzi has seconded the notice of motion regarding Beamer Conservation Area. Before we get into this discussion, I would like to note that staff have been engaging with the NPCA on this project. The NPCA fully intends to attend a council meeting in the future to share some of their findings and recommendation. This will likely occur in spring 2026. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Bradzi. Whereas Beamer makes up more than 50% of the Grimsby canopy and is the only conservation area in Niagara that is fully accessible without a car, and whereas Beamer is a thriving, biodiverse environment and a natural playground with a natural water feature, the creek, and natural greeters, the birds and the animals, etc. And whereas 2026, the NPCA is about to implement a Beamer Conservation Area Management Plan that cites improvements and recreation. And whereas these improvements and recreation are not described in any detail and to date, the NPC has not provided any clarity of what might be considered for improvements and recreation, and whereas the community of Grimsby has expressed reservations about the management plan and its lack of specifics, and the community is concerned that Beamer will morph into a park with park-like infrastructure and improvements that are not aligned with the passive natural environment that is Beamer. And whereas Beamer is a conservation area stewarded by those who visited, hikers, walkers, Spruce Trail volunteers, and wildlife. And whereas some neighbors in the immediate vicinity of Beamer are of one voice that Beamer remain a natural space, therefore be it resolved that the Town of Grimsby Council requests the NPCA to provide written clarification regarding improvements and recreation initiatives for Beamer Conservation Area prior to any finalizing of a management plan, and that priority be given to keep Beamer a passive recreation environment. All in favor? All right. Yeah, you're okay. That's carried. All right, can I have a mover and seconder to approve the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Davoli. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Davoli. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 25-62 and 25-63, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Next council meeting is scheduled for November 17th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Can I have a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor Bradzi. Second by Councillor Korstanji. Moved by Councillor Bradzi, second by Councillor Korstanji. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw 25-64, and that same be read a first time, considered, and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Good night, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.